We all have those things that connect us to our childhood. We all have those things that during our childhood we always loved, we always came back to, and things that we look back at with fondness and memories of just joy. I think that's what makes certain aspects of our lives so important, especially our childhood, and it's also a big reason to why we enjoyed the things we enjoy in our current day society, is whether you're an adult or a teenager or even still a kid, and that's to a degree an importance. But I think there are even people within certain spaces that has had more impact than you could think of. And I think in the Pokemon scene, there are tons of people that has had this type of impact. We have everyone from MNJTV with the impact he has had on the community, which I don't think I have to even go into for people to understand. People like Munching Orange and the impact he has had with his Let's Plays and the popularity he has brought to the Pokemon games through the Let's Plays he has created. Jaywitz with his content surrounding the trading card game, and even outside of the trading card game he has created some pretty interesting content. With Purplecliff with his experience in the Pokemon TCG, and even currently with his Nuzlocke and the just enjoyable funny content he makes. Wolfie with his content surrounding the VGC and competitive Pokemon. But I think there's one creator who I think a lot of us would argue has had impact on not just one of these communities, but in a variety of them in different ways. I think some people would agree with me if I straight up just said that I, to a degree, consider him the father of the Pokemon community. So who could I be talking about? Well, let me introduce you to Jonathan ShadyPenguinn Indovino. Now, while ShadyPenguinn mostly today makes content surrounding competitive Pokemon or the VGC, even though he hasn't uploaded in about a month, he has made a variety of other types of content over the years. The main being his Let's Plays. He has created Let's Plays from the start of his channel, as his first literal video was the start of a Let's Play on Pokemon Dark Rising. For anyone who doesn't know, Pokemon Dark Rising is a ROM hack of Pokemon Leaf Green, essentially a mod of Pokemon Leaf Green that changes the way the game plays out heavily, essentially makes it to a borderline completely different game in its own right. But on top of that, this wasn't just a normal Let's Play. Whilst he would later on go on to create more regular Let's Plays, this was actually a Nuzlocke, which I think is where we get into what ShadyPenguinn really was known for, especially earlier on, his Nuzlockes. You see, ShadyPenguinn isn't just a good Pokemon player, as we can tell by the way he plays in the more VGC-oriented content as of recent, but he's just overall a good player. A big part of what grew his popularity as a creator was actually him doing Wi-Fi battles on Pokemon X and Y, which to a lot of people is super fun and interesting to watch, especially back then when there wasn't as much content on competitive Pokemon battling due to the lack of capture cards. You see, if you wanted to get a capture card for your 3DS, you couldn't just put in an Elgato or connect it to an Elgato. So what you would have to do is you would have to mod the 3DS to be able to capture its content. You see, a lot of people didn't have capture cards for the 3DSs, so a lot of people that even played the games competitively didn't have the ability to actually record and create content in high quality on their 3DS. Which made it so that ShadyPenguinn, who was doing content surrounding it, essentially just had an advantage to start off with because he had a capture card for his 3DS. He was making these high quality adjustments that a lot of people couldn't do at the time. With the popularity that Shady started gaining, as well as the content that he was creating surrounding not only Wi-Fi battles but also Nuzlocke, ended up making it so that more people would collaborate with him. I actually found out about ShadyPenguinn through a battle he did with Munching Orange, who at the time was my favorite creator in the Pokemon scene, who essentially just does regular playthroughs of Pokemon. But one of the other creators they started collaborating with, and that people started to get to know him for collaborating with, was the King Nappy. The King Nappy was a Pokemon creator at the time, mostly creating content surrounding Let's Plays and Nuzlocke as well. This made it so that they made very similar content, could easily collaborate with each other. And this also led to them starting a series called the Soul Link, or the two-player Nuzlocke, as some people call it today. You see, what they did is they essentially grabbed two different copies of the game, and then they played through it together at the same time, Nuzlocking the game at the same time, pairing their Pokemon together, so if one of the players had one of their Pokemon die, the other player also had one of their Pokemon die. This made it very complicated so that people actually had to have teamwork going around between them, and to put more pressure on each other to essentially ensure that they would play their absolute best game, because if they made a mistake, not only would it have an effect on them, but it would also have an effect on the other. This made it a very interesting and exciting series to watch, and honestly, even watching it back today is super enjoyable. Aside from the fact I try and avoid watching Nuppy for obvious reasons. If you want to look into Nuppy and situations surrounding Nuppy, go ahead and look that up. That's its own thing entirely. I don't wanna, I don't wanna focus on him. This video isn't about him. It's about ShadyPenguinn. I could go into that, but I don't want to. However, over time, after a while, you could notice that Shady started enjoying Pokemon and only Pokemon less and less. With this, he started picking up other Let's Plays, such as Fire Emblem and even Duel Links. One of my favorite Let's Plays of all time is, and honestly, he's Let's Play of Fire Emblem Echoes Shadows of Valencia, even though it went unfinished. You see, he would get close to finishing some games, but he would quit due to losing an interest in the games. It wasn't necessarily because the games were bad, or at least I don't assume so, because at least Fire Emblem Echoes is a really good game, and you could tell he enjoyed it at the start, but sometimes you just lose interest in things after a while, because you want to try something else. I get that. That's human. You could also see something else surrounding this on his channel. You see, his viewership started to dwindle. He had an incredibly good playthrough on The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, but you could also tell that he was starting to lose viewership. And with this, his uploading would go less and less consistently. And I noticed pretty quickly that I stopped getting notifications in my inbox for his videos, even if I had notifications on for his channel. And obviously, if your videos aren't getting pushed and you're creating content that's not getting a ton of views, your channel will start getting pushed less. So Shady felt like he had to address this, along with controversy surrounding his old friend, the King Nappy. And so he did. I highly recommend watching this video if you want to go into that depth, but he talks about essentially how his channel has peaked. What has it? He felt like at the time, his channel had peaked in its current form, which he wasn't really wrong about. But he wasn't right either. It took him a little while longer. With the release of Pokemon Sword and Shield, you notice that he still wasn't uploading as actively. He had been doing Fire Emblem Three Houses, which, even according to him, was one of his least successful series of all time. However, after a little while, primarily after Legends Arceus, a lot of people started getting into Pokemon pretty quickly again, due to the game's success. The game was a step in the right direction for Pokemon, and this was noticeable in a lot of ways. One of the ways you could notice this is ShadyPenguinn started gaining a ton of popularity again, for something that I never expected, at least. You see, just before the Legends Arceus release, ShadyPenguinn had been playing through some other content surrounding Pokemon, such as, for example, Xenolock. And when you look at this, you'd also notice that he started uploading content such as Pokemon Platinum Warp Races. And this was super fun to watch because you hadn't really seen this content from Shady before. He also then proceeded to make content like, we pick each other's Pokemon starters for our Pokemon battle. He essentially started doing challenges that would turn into Pokemon battles, showing his talent in competitive battling that he had in Pokemon. Now, I personally am not super interested in modded Pokemon battling. I think that Pokemon battling in itself already has a depth that doesn't really need additions to it. But that's also me. Obviously, these were popular as he went from having 20k views per video to having maybe about 600k on his first Warp Randomizer to 100k on his second, and then his modded videos started averaging about 150 to 200k, which is insane for a channel who, according to the creator, had been in its peak. But how did this happen? Well, not only did he change his formula, but he made it in a way that was interesting. These modded Pokemon videos not only garnered the interest of the people in the modding community and people that were into modded Pokemon, but also people that were interested in competitive Pokemon battling. And this was very clearly a formula that was working, because people were enjoying this content and were actively getting into his content and watching him, which you could tell by the numbers on his videos going up, as well as I actually for one started having my notifications blow up surrounding his content, which was kind of weird because I hadn't had that happen since like 2016. Yeah, that was not something I expected back then. But these aren't the only things ShadyPenguinn has done that has been so interesting. Not only is it the competitive aspect of battling, but also his creativity. You see, there's one thing that ShadyPenguinn is known for above all else. Well, it wouldn't be to keep it shady, at least not. That's not what I mean this time. But rather, he's Shady Locks. You see, in Shady Locks, he wasn't allowed to go to Pokemon centers to heal. He was given tokens to where he could heal depending on how many tokens he had, which made it so he had to be cautious and aware of the amount of PP and such he had before he would erase a move. Moves with more PP had more value than moves with less PP, which made it so that some moves you would have expected to see weren't used as much due to moves like, for example, Overheat having 5 PP. Why would you use that over a move like Flamethrower with 15? And obviously, with that being said, the Shady Lock was generally just very enjoyable. I highly recommend looking through some of the Shady Locks as they can be super fun to watch. ShadyPenguinn has essentially, over time, been one of the most influential people in the Pokemon scene. He even hosted the Pokemon World Championship in 2014. And these are things that aren't just fun to watch. It's exciting. He's a creator who loves what he does and he tries to enjoy every moment of it. And I think that's what makes him such a good creator to begin with. So let's keep enjoying his content along with him, because at the end of the day, there is no one who's better at keeping it shady than the tallest penguin of all the land.